Everyone is talking about the shocking thing that happened yesterday. You know what I'm talking about. I have it on good authority that it was not at all what you might have thought it was. And in any event, the responsible parties are taking steps to make sure it never happens again. In the meantime, keep calm and carry on. And don't forget to take your joy. And the weather report is, rain, rain, go away, come back again some other day. Remember, gentlemen, while rainwater goes down smooth in a whiskey, it does not contain joy. So, if you like to collect rainwater for tempering your constitutional, please remember to adjust your dose accordingly. And the weather is delightfully sunny, inside and out. Who doesn't love an English spring? I expect to see nothing but smiles out there. In fact, anything but smiles out there is strictly forbidden. Also, extremely unlikely, unless someone's happy face falls off. Can you imagine that? Better make sure it's not you. In case you might have heard a loud explosion coming from the general direction of the Victory Memorial Camp, don't worry, it wasn't someone blowing themselves up on the minefield. It was merely the members of the Home Army testing their ordnance. Mortar shells apparently don't last forever, and there's nothing more frustrating than dropping a shell on the enemy and it turning out to be a dud. So they must regularly test their supplies. That's all it was. No fatalities at all, and no worries. You may have noticed one of our favourite shops boarded up. There's no need to worry. We're told the proprietor, you know who I'm talking about, is renovating, and he doesn't want anyone to see it until it's done. At least that's what he says. I suspect he may simply have gone on holidays and doesn't want us to know. So if you notice a certain person comes back to work looking remarkably well rested, we'll know the truth, won't we? Our local football team has done it again. A thrilling victory over some tough rivals. You've never seen such exciting footwork, and they really used their heads. Of course, it's nothing less than we expect from our finest. If you see them, do buy them a pint for me. I'm sorry to say tomorrow's cricket match has been postponed due to uncertain weather. You can't very well play cricket in a typhoon, so we'll let you know the revised schedule as soon as we receive the details. In Hamelin, our favourite butcher shop has a very special today. Is it pork chops? Is it pepperoni? Is it filet mignon? Is it roast chicken? Or is it just several cases of fresh, delicious V-meat? Now that I've got your mouth watering, well, I'm not going to tell you what it is. You'll have to go visit yourself. And do give your favourite butcher my regards. No one slices like he does. There has been some confusion about the pass required to enter the city centre of Wellington Wells. To obtain your pass, you simply need to present yourself in person with a recent photograph and a typed explanation of your purpose at the Department of Public Order. Simple, isn't it? That's all you have to do. The department is located at 5 Wapping Road, near the corner of Bath Street, in the centre of Wellington Wells. I hope that clarifies everything. There has been some excitement at the Victory Memorial Camp. An unauthorized person was intercepted attempting to plant tulips around the chain link fence. Fortunately, she set off all the alarms and was quickly apprehended. Now, imagine how alarming it would have been if she'd not been caught. Kaboom! Yes! Now, the leadership of the Home Army hastens to remind the public that the Victory Camp and the surrounding relics of our heroic resistance have been preserved in its immediate post-victory state. That means unmarked minefields and unexploded ordnance every which way. She could have got herself blown up. So don't be a tourist fatality. No one except members of the Home Army in good standing has any purpose in the memorial camp. And if you want to plant flowers, how about planting them in town where we could all see them? To know more about the war years, their ancient history, and our lives are so much better now. But due to popular demand, we now have a book with all the answers. It's called The Story of Our Victory, and it's written by me, Jack Worthing. It's a lovely little book with cheery illustrations and quotations from all your favourite wartime heroes, and it tells you absolutely everything you should ever want to know about the war and our glorious victory. If it's not in the book, you don't need to know it. Some viewers have asked, how do I join the brave soldiers of the Home Army? Now, I've asked the Home Army leadership to respond, and they would like you to know that the Home Army has a full complement of highly trained warriors ready to repel any future invasion by our enemies, or even our friends. So there's no need to join anything. You can just be a patriot by smiling at everyone you meet. Now, go about your day and enjoy our lovely English weather, whatever it is. Every now and then, you might see someone who seems to be sleeping on the path or even in the middle of the road. Now, we all know that the middle of the road is not the most comfortable place to sleep, and it's rather inconvenient for the rest of us. We might trip on them. So, what's going on? Well, the first thing to find out is if they're sleeping or if they're just lying there. Are their eyes open? If you shake them, do they make sounds? Let's suppose their eyes are open and they seem responsive to you. There's a possibility that they're feeling too sad to get up. In that case, you're dealing with a downer. And we all know what to do with a downer, don't we? Offer them joy. If they won't take it, round up a few people near you and make sure they take it. If their eyes are closed, but they seem responsive, then they may be sick. It's probably best to prop them up in a building and let a doctor know. You don't want to spend too much time with a sick person. You might get sick too. And doctors know just what to do with sick people, after all, and you don't. But what to do if they don't respond? It's possible that they've passed on. Now, there's no need for you to deal with a dead body on the street. The authorities are fully capable of dealing with any deceased citizens and will properly dispose of their remains. And what you should definitely not do is stand there gawping. You don't want to draw a crowd, and it's not healthy to stare at a dead body. It might bring you down. So just leave the body there and move on. And if you see a lot of people walking past someone in the middle of the street, well, you can safely trust that they've already realized there's nothing further they can do for that person. Just pretend that the person in the street is not there. Sooner or later they won't be. Take it from me, Uncle Jack. What's done is done, and it's best if we all move on. You'll be glad you did. And now it's time for I Hear You, the part of our show where Jack Worthing, that's me, answers your letters and questions about our life in Wellington Wells. And my first letter is from Mrs. Emily Cluley of Falkland Road. Dear Uncle Jack, I adore your show and thank you for answering my question. I have a big Victorian bed that my husband inherited from his grandmum, but most nights he crawls off to sleep in the small bedroom in the small bed we have there. He promises that it's not because I snore, but he won't say why he does, and I'm not sure he even knows. He seems a little sad. What should I do? Dear Emily. May I call you Emily? Your letter is quite touching. You know the answer, don't you? Yes. You see, if he seems a little sad, there's only one possible answer. He's off his joy of it, isn't he? Yes. You must encourage him to take his pills, even if he seems a bit defiant. Take him to a doctor. There's no sense in sleeping in a rickety little bed in a small room when you can sleep in a proper English bed in a proper master bedroom. And quite frankly, even if you did snore, if he's taking his joy, then he should sleep soundly regardless. Just make sure he falls asleep before you do, and you both should be fine. Thank you for writing, Emily, and do keep me posted about your progress. Well, it was a bit of a dreary letter, wasn't it? I'm sorry. Forget I read it, will you? Let's take a look at another one, shall we? This one is from Mrs. Purdy Robbins Handley of Oldfield Park. Dear Uncle Jack, my husband won't take off his happy face at home. He won't even take it off in bed. He's that healthy. He says he has nightmares if he takes it off, but it's a little, but it's a little creepy in it. She actually wrote in it. And she says, I mean, he could be anyone. Well, Purdy, are you sure he actually is your husband? Well, you can't be too careful these days, can you? No, but seriously, Purdy, we do what it takes to stay happy, don't we? And the happy mask is scientifically sculpted to keep you happy. You see, when your facial muscles are shaped in a smile, well, you can't help feeling happy. Now, normally, I would suggest you take more joy. But some people do have a slight intolerance to joy. Now, if your husband is one of these people, he may just be doing what he needs in order to keep himself up. Certainly, if he's having nightmares without his happy face, well, why on earth should he sleep without it, when he can sleep with it and not have nightmares? So, come on, have a little conjugal consideration and appreciate his good qualities. Assuming he is, after all, not an imposter. Thank you for writing, Purdy. This one is from Poppy Findlay of Twerton Manor. Dear Uncle Jack, I have a lovely row of tulips in front of my house. I should say, I used to have, because they're half gone, and I found a great big pile of tulip tops in the rubbish. Has some animal come and eaten half my tulip bulbs? Is it a badger? How can I catch it and eat it? Well, Poppy, I'm sorry to tell you it's extremely unlikely that you have a badger, given that the tulip tops were placed in the rubbish. I think that you might actually be dealing with a hungry human. Did you know that you could eat tulip bulbs? Yes. Actually, there's a fabulous and hilarious story from the Dutch tulip mania of the 1600s. See, there was this sailor who visited a friend of his, and he saw an onion on his table, and he ate it. Now, it turned out to be a rare tulip bulb worth hundreds of guineas. And he ate it. Can you imagine the kerfuffle that he heard? Well, I hope he enjoyed it. Actually, there's no word what happened to the sailor, but I bet he took the next ship out. Hope he wasn't hanged. Yes. Anyway, do you by chance happen to live near the garden district? Sometimes the unfortunate souls who live near there come into the village, and, well, it wouldn't surprise me at all if it was them that ate your tulip bulbs. But I doubt there's anything you can do about it, except watch your remaining flowers and call the police if you see anyone near them. In the meantime, if you could eat tulip bulbs, you could probably eat the tops too with a bit of cooking. Well, it couldn't hurt anyway, eh? Well, I'm afraid we've come to the end of our time. Tune in again next time, when I hope you'll join us and we'll answer all your questions about life in Wellington Wells. I'll see you soon.
Wakey, wakey, everyone. It's another fabulous day in Wellington Wells. The weather is only slightly rainy with streaks of lovely sunshine. Everyone in Wellington Wells is doing exactly what he or she ought to. Smiling and laughing and taking their joy. What about you?
That's right. I'm talking to you. Are you doing what you should? Of course you are. After all, you're not a downer, are you? We know what to do about downers, don't we?
Now, some people have asked me what to do about the happy, excited throngs running through the street.
What you should do is
join the fun!
And now it's time for Funny Old Customs, the show in which Jack Worthing, that's me, illuminates our jolly island's ancient customs. Today, we're going to talk about human sacrifice. Yes, many of our forebears enjoyed a human sacrifice or two, and I'm not just talking about watching a good hanging, like we did during the... Never mind, sometimes I don't even know what I'm talking about. Well, the most famous British sacrifices were the ancient Celts. According to Julius Caesar, their druids liked to put criminals and prisoners of war into giant wicker men and then set them on fire. Wow, what a sight that must have been. And if you don't think we can trust the Romans, then how about the bog bodies? Yes, we found beautifully preserved bodies in peat marshes, and some of them show evidence of having been strangled, drowned, and stabbed to death. That's how you propitiate a god, eh? Makes you wonder if anybody's buried under Stonehenge, eh? And if they are, who's under our own little henge, the wedding party stones? Maybe someone should check. Of course, all this was before we Anglo-Saxons became an island race. Back then, we were pagans and worshipped dark gods. The darkest and most important of the gods was Wotan, whereas the Vikings called him Odin. He was a war god. Well, perhaps he still is a war god. And the Vikings would sacrifice 99 men and women in a great blot to make sure he stayed happy. That's a long way from Abraham and Isaac, isn't it? Well, I'm afraid we've come to the end of our time. Maybe someday we'll talk about the ancient Aztecs of Mexico, who liked to cut a man's heart out while it was still beating. Fortunately, no one does it anymore, as far as I know. Well, you never know what goes on in the Garden District, do you? At least, I hope you don't. Well, remember me in your prayers, whoever it is you're praying to. And tune in again soon for more Uncle Jack. Have you ever wondered what life will be like 20 years into the future? That would be the year 1984. Yes, it sounds like a very long way away, doesn't it? But 1984 may be closer than you think. At the Wellington Wells House of the Future, you can imagine yourself in 1984 when machines will clean your house while you nap. That'll make the wife happy, won't it? And we'll also have pills that replace food, so you'll never have to eat again. Beef Wellington, delicious. Now, the inventors at the Department of Scientific and Industrial Research have all sorts of amazing things in store. We'll have typewriters that type the words for you as you say them. And imagine being able to listen to your own music anywhere you go. In phone booths. Yes, there'll be a built-in record player. Just bring your favorite records along when you go for a spin in your flying car. And of course, we'll always have our joy. We couldn't do without that, could we? It won't change a bit. It's perfect, just the way it is. Well, it's getting late, isn't it? And it's time for all good citizens to hop into bed for the night. Would you like me to read you a bedtime story? Of course you would. I haven't finished the story of Hansel and Gretel. Well, snuggle up by your telly or radio, and I'll tell you how it ends. When we left Hansel and Gretel, their son had just abandoned them in the woods for the second time. But Hansel and Gretel had cleverly left a trail of breadcrumbs for them to find their way back. But it was a very hard winter, and starving birds had already pecked up all of the breadcrumbs. And snow began to fall, which covered up anything the birds had left. Hansel and Gretel could not find their way home. Instead, they only wandered deeper into the woods. After 3 days of trudging in the snow without anything to eat, they were on the verge of dying of exposure when they came upon a small house. A white bird stood upon the roof in spite of the snow, and now and then pecked at it. And so they realized that the entire house was made out of gingerbread, and the windows were made out of clear sugar. They were starving, of course, so Hansel helped himself to a chunk of the eaves, while Gretel broke off some of the window frame, which was made of frosting. Then a voice came from inside. "Nibble, nibble, little mouse. Who's nibbling at my house?" They answered, "It's only the wind which nibbles away at all things." But then Gretel poked her finger through the window in order to break off a piece of the clear sugar, and a witch suddenly came out of the house. Now you see, they could tell she was a witch because she was beautiful and young, but she moved carefully, like someone who had once been old. Now they expected her to be angry, but she was kind, or so she seemed. "You poor dears," she said, "come into my house and sit by the fire, and you can have all the gingerbread and cake you like." And they ate gingerbread and cake and pancakes, and soon they fell asleep, for they were exhausted. But the witch, but the witch was only pretending to be kind to Hansel and Gretel. Really, she intended to cook and eat them. In fact, she had made the gingerbread house in order to lure someone to eat. For witches believe, I am told, that if you eat someone, you get their power. Hansel woke up in a cell made not of sugar, but iron bars and oak beams, and cry as he might, no help came to him. And the witch woke Gretel, saying, "Get up, cook a nice meal for your husband, for he's to be fattened up." So Gretel cooked up an omelette full of cheese and pancakes and biscuits. Biscuits for breakfast? Well, it might have been wonderful if it wasn't so evil. And the witch watched Hansel eat, planning how to cook him up. But then Gretel hit her hard as she could in the head with the firewood axe, and the witch never looked at anything again. Some say Gretel did something cleverer to the witch, like tricking her into the oven. But it doesn't pay to be too clever, you know. Gretel let her husband out of his cell, and the two of them rejoiced and ate as much of the house as they could stomach. And as they munched and crunched the house, they discovered there were pearls and precious stones hidden in the gingerbread. Hansel filled his pockets, and Gretel filled her apron. By now, the sun had come out, and Hansel and Gretel were able to work out which way their home was. So they walked home, excited to tell their son all about the pearls and rubies and sapphires they'd found in the house. The woodcutter's wife answered their door. The woodcutter's wife... Here it comes. The woodcutter's wife answered the door, and, well, Gretel quickly cut her down with an axe. Good old Gretel. And her son quickly forgave her, for blood is thicker than water. And the moral of the story is, if you want someone dead, do it yourself. Well, no, that's not actually the moral of the story. This story doesn't have a moral. Good stories never do. Well, I'm afraid we've come to the end of our time. Tune in tomorrow evening, and I'll tell you the rest of the story of Goldilocks and the Three Bears. It's a lovely story, and I'm sure you'll enjoy the rest of it. For now, this is Jack Worthing saying good night all. See you in the morning. And it's another brilliant day in Wellington Wells. The weather is a little rainy, but I think I can assure you that it's going to dry up to merely a bit overcast. That's the wonderful thing about English weather. You always know you're going to get a little bit of rain, but it's never going to be too cold or too hot. Well, it's not time to hibernate, and you're not a bear, so come on out. Or if you are a bear, then I'm very impressed that you know how to turn on a television set. Wakey, wakey, everyone. Good morning to you. Good morning to you. Good morning, dear friends. Good morning to you. Well, I was up all night fretting. I'm joking. I had a fantastic night's sleep. Actually, I can't remember a single thing about last night. And that's how I like it. How about you? If you're taking your joy, then you shouldn't have any trouble sleeping. And if you missed some, well, what on earth are you waiting for? Get back on your dose. And I think I can promise you your day will go as sweet as a summer breeze. Well, what's going on today in the village of Hamlin? The circus is coming to town! Ha ha! No, I'm sorry, I fooled you. It's just going to be a regular, wonderful, ordinary, spectacular day. But of course, we'll interrupt the day because, well, we love to do that, with our daily recreational activity. What are we going to do for fun today? Well, how about Simon Says? I love Simon Says, don't you? It's been too long since we've played it, hasn't it? Now, I'm a bit vague about the details. No, really. So, I think we ought to play it today, just to be sure. Well, you can never be too careful. So at 3, gather in front of the telly for a rousing round of Simon Says. No, wait, I didn't say Simon Says gather. No, stop. We're not playing it yet, so you're all right. And don't forget, there will be cake and prizes for all winners, and everyone's a winner, and everyone will be there. So don't miss it, or you'll stick out like a downer. You can't have downers, right? Brilliant. And now, the catchy new song from our favourite new band.